Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Professor Mitchell from Psychology 205. I apologize, this is coming out a little later than I expected, but I did let you know that I'd be sending out a brief study guide or review for the exam. And so that's what I'm going to do for the next 5 to 10 minutes, is just give you a quick review of what you should be concentrating on before you take the final exam. Just a quick reminder that the final exam is on Ivy Learn on Canvas. So you have until the end of the week to get this finished. There's only a small amount of questions. However, they are short answer for the most part. So make sure that when you sit down and get ready to take it, that you are ready. You can use notes. You can use whatever resources you want. However, because these are short answer, if you don't fully understand the concept, you're going to have a hard time if you don't know the answer ahead of time. So what I mean by that is, you may use your notes in your textbook to maybe refresh your memory about some terminology, or to get clarification on one of the concepts you're thinking of. But if you don't know the answer from studying throughout the semester, it's going to be really hard. You're not going to be able to just dig through the textbook and find the answer to these, because they are a little bit higher on the taxonomy grid. So please take a few minutes to study, just review. Hopefully you've been studying all semester. So here's the review. Without a doubt, from week 1, I've been talking about the 4 Ds of abnormality. If you haven't gotten that crammed into your head yet, or at least be able to understand when you were presented with it, you can recall and recognize some of the information about that, then you're going to struggle to begin with. And you'll definitely need to know the 4 Ds and what the 4 Ds are all about. You're also going to need to know quite a bit about schizophrenia, okay? Primarily, what's going on with schizophrenia, what type of disorder is it, which it's a psychotic disorder that's characterized by 2 major positive symptoms: hallucinations and delusions. And you don't have to understand the antipsychotic medications per se. You don't have to know how they work and the difference between an typical and an atypical. But what is the medication designed to do? It's obviously designed for, going back to the medical model, symptom reduction. Therefore, as an individual who has schizophrenia, what would be the downfalls of taking medication? What would be the upside of taking medication? And kind of on a societal level, do we want people with schizophrenia taking their medication, or do we not? And that's kind of leading you pretty heavily into what the question's going to be. So think about that. Whether or not people with schizophrenia, because of the societal demands and things that they're going to be interacting with people in society, is that something that we want to force people to do? Okay. We spent a lot of time in the last couple weeks talking about ADHD and ADHD medications, specifically psychostimulants. Kind of the same thing as schizophrenia. Is this something that if somebody has ADHD, we should be encouraging them to take psychostimulants, or is the psychostimulant is that something that should be used only if the person feels like they want it? And then also, we talked quite a bit about psychostimulants being used as a performance enhancer and not as a means of decreasing symptoms of ADHD. So you had time to think about that. You'll probably be addressing that on the final. We're going to jump back into personality disorders as well. Remember the 3 clusters: cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. And what I want you to do is remember that personality disorders are only an issue if they hit that 4th D, the dysfunction. And so you should be able to pick an example. Some of you already done this. Pick an example of a fictional character or a real person in real life who may be suffering from a personality disorder, and what does that really look like? So be sure that you can do that. We spent about a week, not the most fun week of class, but talking about a suicide and assisted suicide. Remember Emil Durkheim? Durkheim had those 4 different types of suicide. And we also want to look at the practice of assisted suicide and how that really doesn't fit the model of abnormal psychology, because for the person, it may seem dangerous to outsiders, but is it dangerous to the person? Is it distressing to the person? Is it dysfunctional to the person versus dysfunctional to society? So you should be able to look at Durkheim's 4 different types of suicide and apply it to assisted suicide. One thing that we didn't explicitly hit on, because we didn't get through the sex and gender chapter in all of my 205s, but it's still something that I want you guys to, we talked about this particular topic, the fact that the DSM, in the transition from DSM-3 to DSM-4, and then subsequently in DSM-5, there have been these major radical changes in gender and sex dysfunctions. And when I say radical, I don't mean radical as they are bad, but radical meaning that we've done, the field of psychology and psychiatry have done like 180s on what these disorders and now lack of disorders actually mean. So make sure that you go back and you review the transition from DSM-3 to DSM-4, looking at things like the exclusion of homosexuality as a actual disorder, which at one time it was in the DSM, and maybe look at the transition from DSM-4 to DSM-5 with the transition of gender identity disorder to removal of gender identity disorder, or transition of gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria. There's 2 different ways of looking at that, because just because somebody had GID does not necessarily mean that they automatically transition to gender dysphoria. They're 2 different things, but a lot of people look at them as the GID transition to gender dysphoria. So make sure you know what's going on there. Let me see here. And then you'll probably want to know, the major symptoms of some of the major disorders, with bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, the personality disorders. Just make sure that you have, an idea of what symptoms are and what a symptom is when it comes to a diagnosis. And then finally, there is a question on the final exam that is quite perplexing, okay? It is a question that, unfortunately, I messed up somehow. And once once one person took the test, I'm not able to go in and change it. So there is a question, and I believe that I have it set up to kind of mix up the questions for everybody who takes it. It may be question 7. It may be a different question for you when you take the exam, but it's the question about CTE. And we spent the last kind of section, last 2 weeks or week, discussing CTEs and brain trauma and brain injury. But the question, it's a good question. I would love for you to answer the question. However, for some reason, I put it in as a multiple choice question, and then all the multiple choice options are no answer, text provided. So you're going to look at this, and it's going to have a big, long question, and then it's going to give you 4 options. Choose A. They're all the same. Choose A. If you don't choose A, I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to give you credit for it. So just choose A and move on. Okay, that was my bad. So everybody gets to benefit from my bad on that one. Hopefully you can answer it. Hopefully you can sit there and think about it, because it is important. Because the reason we kind of ended the class on CTE is because it's something that's really in pop culture today, especially with parents deciding whether their kids can be in contact sports, and whether or not you as a person may be wanting to engage in sports that might leave you with very significant mental impairments, and whether or not you want to support professions that have their employees or athletes subjecting themselves to these really significant problems. So enough about that. That was my mistake. You benefit from my mistake. Okay, so that's basically the big topics that you need to know for this exam. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, bmitchell@ivtech.edu. You can text me. I'm not going to put the text number out on public access here, but you have it if you have my syllabus. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. And I really enjoyed all the sections of my 205 this semester. I had 1, 2, 3. I had 3 sections, 3 very different sections. I had one my American Honors, or I'm sorry, my IB Honors course, my face-to-face class, which is my General 205, and then I had a high school dual credit one. And it was quite amazing how each of those classes approached these topics very differently. So it was a really good semester for me for 205 because I got asked different questions at every single lecture, and that helps me kind of cater the course content to what is most intriguing to people. And it really kept me on my toes, and that was really awesome because when I have the same 205 class, 3 or 4 times a year, sometimes I just kind of get into a rut where I'm talking about the same things. And when I get feedback and I get questions from different areas, that really helps me. And especially when students ask a question at one section, I can take that to the other classes. So everybody benefited this semester from all the different types of students that I had. So awesome semester. I hope everybody has a great summer. Hopefully you guys have registered for some summer courses. Best way to keep yourself going in college is take a couple summer courses. I know some of you may not be able to because you feel like you're working, but we have night classes. In 8 weeks, you can knock out 3 to 6 credits. That's a half a semester almost. And if your excuse is, well, I don't have any funds left from my Pell Grants or financial aid, don't let that stop you. We've been told over and over that there are funds available out there. So take some classes over the summer. You may miss a couple parties, you may miss a couple hours of sleep, but you're going to get done with your education so much quicker, and you get to go out there and start having fun in the real world. So enough advertising. I will hopefully see you all in another psych course. Psych Human Sexuality is an awesome one that I offer every semester, except for summers. We're going to be offering, now that we have the TSAP, we have some new courses like Research Methods, which is going to be a blast. It's a relatively dry course, but I'm going to try to make it as intriguing as possible. So I'm going to try to teach it with a little bit less emphasis on sitting and reading about all the different types of experiments and pseudo experiments and research methods and statistics. We're gonna get into some of the historical research, and we're gonna get into why we can't do some of the research that we used to do. Milgram experiment, Stanford prison experiment, all these different things. We'll talk about the history. I'm gonna try to make it as innovative as possible because it's a new course we have for the TSAP. Okay, all right. You can hit the study books, or you can hit the test now. Good luck, and again, I hope to see you all real soon in another class.